So we've each had our copious amount of coffee just before coming on, and I feel like it's appropriate to ask you, based on the body of your work, what you had for breakfast.
Coffee.
Coffee. All right. Well, CEOs take note. You heard it from Marion Nestle herself.
I'm not a breakfast eater.
Oh my goodness. We're going to have to come back to that because that feels significant. Let's get started with the other news of the day, which is the final version of Secretary Kennedy's much anticipated childhood health report was finally released earlier this month. Your assessment, is it going to make American children healthy again?
It's hard to know because it's a report about intentions. We're going to look at this. We're going to explore this. We're going to investigate. We're going to do research. The only place where regulation was mentioned was in the context of closing the generally recognized as safe grass, closing the grass loophole, which is a rule that allows food corporations to decide for themselves whether the additives they put in food are okay or not. So that they're going to regulate, but the word regulation didn't come up anyplace else.
And that's your feeling that would be central to?
Well, if you're going to make America's children healthy again, you're going to have to regulate. And there's no sign of that. So far, it's all cooperation, and we're going to use carrots, not sticks. That has never worked with the food industry. The food industry. Can I state the obvious?
Oh, please. Yes.
For the food companies are not social service agencies, and they're not public health agencies. They're businesses. They've got stockholders to please. And that has to be their first priority. That's the way our investment system works. So under those circumstances, they're not going to do anything that's going to reduce the bottom line. There have been two MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, has scored two very clear wins. Very clear wins. It's getting the color additives out of the food supply. It has gotten the major food companies to voluntarily agree to get the synthetic color additives out of their foods by the end of 2027. That's something that food advocates have been trying for decades. So that's a clear win. And the regulation of closing the grass loophole is a clear win. Neither one of those is going to make any difference at all to American kids' health, or it's not going to make much difference, because the real problem with America's kids is that they're gaining too much weight, and that's calories. And the one other obvious thing that I would say is if you want to do something about calories, you have to eat less. And eating less is very bad for business.
So if you were going to get out, because you've said, you share a lot of the perspective on the need to make kids healthier, to help kids be healthier. In some ways, a lot of this aligns with your lifetime of work. So if you were going to get your, red pen out and make this report into something that, parents, schools, the government could use to really make kids healthier, what would your recommendations be?
Well, let me just say that when President Trump announced that he was appointing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services, he did it in the context of talking about the industrial food complex. I nearly fell on the floor when I read that. I thought, wait a minute, here's President Trump sounding just like me.
He's read your book, books.
Maybe so. That seemed astonishing. And RFK Jr. started talking about how the food industry is making America sick and poisoning America. And we need to do something about this. And we need to do something about childhood obesity. I thought, wait a minute, RFK Jr. sounds just like Michelle Obama. All of this was just mind-boggling. And then I'm waiting to see, okay, that's the talk. What are they actually going to do? And that's what I'm waiting for. And that's why the second MAHA report was so disappointing.
Have you spoken with Secretary Kennedy?
No, never.
Okay.
Never.
You've sparred with the food industrial complex for years. If he were to call you, what would you have advice for him about how to deal with this sort of constellation of very powerful lobbies?
The probability of his calling me is so infinitesimally small that it's hard to think.
But let's imagine.
That it's hard to think about that. But I would be happy to give advice if I were asked. I don't think they'd like it much.
Well, what would it be, though?
Well, I would say, first of all, you've got to regulate marketing to children. I mean, that's the #1 priority. You want to make kids healthier again, you've got to stop marketing junk food, ultra-processed foods to kids. You've got to get ultra-processed foods out of schools. You have to have universal school meals so all kids get healthy food at least twice a day. That would be really helpful. You got to change the agricultural system from one that prioritizes commodity foods to one that prioritizes food for people. You know, there are big changes that need to be made, and this is an opportunity to do that because the MAHA movement is big and it's strong. And it's mothers who really care about the health of their children. And they're using their power to get color additives out. You know, you take the color additives out of Fruit Loops, they're still Fruit Loops. You know, or to pick the one that I find nutritionally hilarious, you take high fructose corn syrup out of Coca-Cola, it's still Coca-Cola. Oh.
So let's step back a little bit. You know, you said that Secretary Kennedy and the MAHA movement have painted a devastating picture of children's health in America, you know, with the initial report. Is it an accurate picture? I mean, are children unhealthier than ever before?
Well, I don't know whether it's unhealthier than ever before, but certainly the levels of obesity among children are staggering. 20 to 30% of American children are overweight or obese. I mean, I remember when I was in school and when my kids were in school, there would be an occasional overweight kid, the subject of much brutality and in stigmatizing. But now most kids are, or it looks to me like, you look at playgrounds and kids are pudgy compared to what they used to be. That's not a good sign because obesity is a risk factor for a whole bunch of chronic diseases. If we had a healthcare system, it might not be as much of a problem, but we don't have a healthcare system. And that means that somebody is going to have to pay for taking care of type 2 diabetes in kids. Type 2 diabetes never used to be in kids. You know, obesity is this most significant risk factor for it. And you know, this is preventable or should be preventable with healthier eating, more physical activity, and get those kids off those phones.
So it sounds like if and when Secretary Kennedy calls you, the to-do list is long.
Oh,
we're adding industries that he can
Well,
tackle.
he's actually talking about that. The report talked about phones.
Yeah.
I thought that was good. And there are a lot of other good things in the report. I'm mostly focused on the food, and I found that disappointing because a lot of the initial statements about what they were going to do about the food supply, getting glyphosate out, or Roundup out of food, seemed like really good ideas, and nothing was said in the second report about that. And there's a fair amount of evidence from excellent investigative reporting that the agricultural industry got to him. There were a lot of meetings with agricultural producers saying, what are you trying to do, put us out of business? And so there's been a lot of backing off. And it's very unclear what they're actually going to do. They've got 3 more years. They got plenty of time. What are they going to do? Well, I'm just not seeing it.
So you mentioned this, but the report pledges that the government will eventually define ultra-processed foods. It stops short of doing so yet. How would you define ultra-processed foods?
Oh, I think it's basically a class of junk foods where the foods don't resemble the foods from which they were derived, and that if you can't make it in your home kitchen, it's ultra-processed. I mean, those are sort of simple definitions, but the easiest explanation is corn on the cob is unprocessed, canned corn is minimally processed. Those are foods. Doritos are ultra-processed. I mean, it's really pretty simple. There's some problems at the edges, and that's why they want a legal definition. I think defining it is not a bad idea. Get a legal definition. For example, California has just done that, and they have a great big long list of additives. If a food contains any one of those additives, it's considered ultra-processed. And as long as it's high in sugar and salt or fat as well. So that's one definition, but they can define it. The question is what they're going to do with the definition.
Well, I was going to say, is there any policy that they could enact that would lead to people consuming less?
They could say, no ultra-processed foods in schools. We're going to put warning labels on ultra-processed foods like they do in Latin American countries, Chile, Mexico, Brazil. I was in Mexico this year, and I went into a supermarket. I couldn't believe it. Half the products in the supermarket have these great big black warning labels all over them.
Like cigarettes.
Don't eat me. And you don't have to be able to read, and you can be a preschool child and point to a warning label and say, Mommy, don't buy that. Guess what the food industry thinks about warning labels?
So, changing gears a little bit, there is something that's making lots of Americans eat less, which is the widespread adoption of GLP-1 drugs. What's your perspective there? Do you see them genuinely changing the ways Americans eat in the long term, or are you concerned about pharmaceutical intervention? What's your perspective?
Well, all of those things at once. I mean, these are from a nutritionist standpoint, the GLP-1 drugs are fascinating. They're absolutely fascinating because they do something completely unexpected, which was they turn off the food noise. I had never heard the term food noise, but I love it. And what it means is it's that idea, if you've got food in the house, you feel like you've just got to eat it. Oreo cookies, they do it for me. Ice cream does it for me. Barbecued potato chips, yep, food noise. They turn it off. And what people say is they still like food, they still want to eat, they just don't want to eat as much. And they don't think about food all the time the way they did before. This is bad for business. GLP-1 drugs are terrible for the food industry. The food industry is under siege right now from RFK Jr., from ultra-processed foods, from GLP-1 drugs, and from all of these concerns. And they're really worried about it. Walmart has already reported a reduction in sales from people who are on GLP-1 drugs. They're not eating as much. They want smaller portions. They want more protein and more vitamins and less junk. I mean, this is fascinating.
So the food industry is under siege. Do they have an opportunity here, though, do you think?
Well, they hope so. The problem is people like buying foods that have a lot of sugar and salt, and they don't like buying foods that are healthier, except for protein. And we could talk about protein. That's also bizarre. This is such a fun time to be a nutritionist. What can I say?
Well, this is a perfect segue because my next question was about the protein boom. So, most Americans, my understanding is, do not need more protein nutritionally. So why are brands putting it in ice cream and Cheerios?
And candy. Or my current favorite, I'm writing a book about cereals because I have this collection of cereal boxes, and my current favorite is Cheerios cookies and cream protein cereal. Okay, whatever. Well, it's the one, it's positive. Eat more protein is better than eat less carbohydrate or eat less fat. So it's a positive message. It's the one thing that you can do that, and it actually sometimes makes people not as hungry. So there's that. I think it's pretty harmless to eat too much protein. There are big arguments about whether eating too much protein is harmful or not. I'm not convinced that the evidence is very strong that eating too much protein is bad for your kidneys. Really weak evidence. So, it's something that you can do, and it makes you feel like you're doing something for yourself. And people are trying to be healthier. It makes you feel like you're healthier, whatever.
I was going to say, you've mentioned that this is a fascinating time to be a nutritionist. What do you hear from folks when you're at events like this, when you're speaking? What are people coming up to you and saying afterwards now? Has that changed in the time you've been doing this?
Well, one of the things I've been doing, and I'll do it right now, is if you're on GLP-1 drugs, would you come up after privately and tell me what your experience is with them? And I have heard the most amazing stories, just astonishing stories. So I hear a lot from GLP-1 users because I'm asking to hear about their experiences, which are quite fascinating. And people are telling me that they're avoiding additives, they're avoiding color additives, they're avoiding foods that have, they're avoiding ultra-processed foods. I think that's good. That's a good thing. And if you couple, get rid of ultra-processed foods, or at least not eat as much of them. I'm not ready to give them up. But and then couple that with smaller portions, people will have a much easier time controlling their calorie intake. And that seems like a good thing. So one of the things the MAHA movement has done without question is to bring these issues to public attention in a way that nobody's been able to do before. So that, I think, is a good thing. If only it would move in a more constructive direction. And I don't think substituting cane sugar for high fructose corn syrup is going to do that.
It's going to do the trick.
No.
So in a couple of minutes, Marion, we'll take questions from you if you have questions for Marion. So please be thinking about those. Let's talk about the food supply in the United States. You told me something that I think is extraordinary, which is that it's now possible to eat healthfully anywhere in the U.S.
Yeah.
That seems significant to me,
Yeah.
with a few important caveats. That's a big shift from when you started writing about food policy. What's happening there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the food industry has done a fabulous job of putting anything that anybody could possibly want in every supermarket in the United States, and I'm including what used to be called Barrow, Alaska, because I was there in a supermarket and I couldn't believe what they had. They had blueberries from Patagonia in Barrow, Alaska. I was there in the winter. I thought that was a real achievement. Don't even ask me what they cost, because that's the issue, is, if you've been to a grocery store lately, have you noticed that prices have gone up?
Has anyone noticed that?
Has anyone noticed? Has anyone noticed?
A few hands, yeah.
And if you think prices have gone up here, you should see what it's like in Alaska. Where everything in that city has to be flown in. There are no roads that go to that city. Everything is flown in. So it's expensive. And so that's the big issue, is can you afford it? Can you deal with it? You want people eating more fruits and vegetables. Do they know how to cook them? Do they know how to prepare them? Do they have refrigerators? Lots of people don't. So that's the real issue, is what is the cost going to do to problems of what is called food insecurity in America, which, by the way, as of last week, we are no longer going to measure. If you read that the annual report on food insecurity that the Department of Agriculture has published for 20 or 30 years, those reports, the last one will come out in October, I believe, and then there won't be any more.
And what do the food insecurity numbers trigger? Like, how do people use that data?
Well, you look at it, and first of all, they're a basis for food assistance programs. And if you're trying to get rid of food assistance programs, one way to do it is nobody needs food assistance. If we don't measure it, it's not there. And the last one, which came out at the end of 2024, showed a sharp uptick in food insecurity in the United States. Not too surprising, because that was when Congress eliminated all of the additional subsidies that they had put in during COVID. And so a lot more people applied for food stamps and reported that they didn't have enough money to buy food on a regular basis. Okay. So the percentages are now up to where they were in 2008.
So it's a significant backslide.
A significant backstepping. And so no wonder they don't want to have, these are very inconvenient results. So let's just not measure it anymore.
Do we have questions for Marion from the audience? Yes,
We do.
We have a microphone. Come to you with a microphone.
And I'll take confessions, too.
Yeah. Yeah. And could you introduce yourself and be sure to ask a question?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rebecca Wright from Barnard College. Thanks so much for this conversation. Can you connect some of what you're talking about around agriculture and the food industry to the sustainability question? How that further complicates efforts to make
I have two measures of what the American food system is. The Department of Agriculture publishes a fabulous graph in which it shows what happens to the United States corn supply. And slightly under half of it goes to feed animals. And we could talk about whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. Slightly under the other half goes to make ethanol to fuel automobiles. And pretty much the same percentages apply to soybeans, except that that's diesel fuel, not ethanol. Hardly any corn and soybeans in the United States go to feed people. They go to corn ingredients or for soy ingredients, but they don't go to food. That's an enormous sustainability issue because you're using vast amounts of American farmland, much of it which should not be used to grow corn, particularly because there's not enough water around, but because the subsidy system goes to support corn and soybean prices. Farmers are incentivized to grow as much as they possibly can on as much land as possible to make fuel for automobiles and trucks and airplanes. I don't know. It's a crazy system. And my other one is that there are two seed firms, own 50% of the seeds in the United States, half of them genetically modified. That's our food system. We're not focused on food for people at all. We would do much better if we were focusing on producing fruits, vegetables, and things that people could actually eat rather than food products. Sorry if any of you are food product makers.
But you'll hear their confessions.
But I'd love to.
Well, let's take another question. Over here?
Hi, Marion. It's Taya again. I was her student in college. She's an amazing professor. Marion, food's expensive, fresh food's even more so, as you talked about. SNAP provides families with about $1,000 a month. How do we address that constructively? And in an ideal world, how do you incentivize people to choose fresh foods over the less expensive ultra-processed? In your ideal world.
Well, there are two issues with people eating fruits and vegetables. One of them is they have to have enough money to buy them, and they're not perceived, because they're not high in calories, they're not perceived by a lot of people as being very satisfying. And a lot of people didn't grow up eating fruits and vegetables, and so that's the other issue, which is culture. And one is to change the financial system. How about a universal basic income, for example, to make sure that everybody has enough money to buy food? But then you need to do cultural shifts. It's very difficult to change culture. That requires an enormous amount of education. It requires experience. That's why I think school food is so important. I've been to schools in Harlem where I have seen kids, and in Brooklyn, where I have seen kids in the poorest neighborhoods in Harlem and Brooklyn eating vegetables happily because they grew those vegetables in a garden in the school. So this is how you do it. You start early, you teach kids about what food is, how to grow it, how to harvest it, how to prepare it, and guess what? They'll eat it. They really will. I've seen it with my own eyes. I know it works. But this is a lot of work and a lot of effort, and a lot of ground-up effort, community organizing and ground-up effort, and that a lot of places don't want to bother with or want to assume that these things are going to happen by themselves. They're not. So two issues, money and changing culture.
I think we can take one more short one if someone has a question right here.
Hi, my name is Aniket, and I'm with First Source. This question is not about sustainability It's about nutrition and supplements. I've been marketed supplements like, I'm going to be unhealthy. You need supplements for magnesium and zinc, and I just want to know, what is your view on supplements?
I don't take them.
Pretty clear.
And I don't take them for two reasons. One is that I'm absolutely convinced that they're not. I mean, supplements are another completely fascinating nutritional story, because more than half of American adults, maybe as many as 70% of American adults, take supplements, and you go into any drugstore and you can see from the amount of space that the supplements take up how lucrative they must be. There is virtually, can I exaggerate? There's virtually no evidence that supplements make healthy people healthier. If you're vitamin deficient, take a vitamin. Most people are not vitamin deficient. The secret of healthy nutrition is eating a variety of relatively unprocessed foods. If you eat a variety of relatively unprocessed foods, your vitamins are fine. You don't need very much of them. But we're all anxious about what we eat. Or a lot of people are anxious about what we eat, and we think we're not getting enough, so supplements seem like they're necessary. And fortunately, most of them are benign. If you eat too many water-soluble supplements, you're going to pee out the excess. It's not going to matter. The fat-soluble ones are slightly problematic, but really, you can take as many supplements as you want, and they probably won't do any harm. Whether they do any good is arguable. So I don't take them because I think I eat a healthy enough diet, and I don't know.
Okay, so you don't take supplements, you don't eat breakfast.
Well, I eat eventually, I promise.
I was going to say.
I just don't get hungry until about 10:30 or 11.
Okay.
And that's when I eat. I'll pick up some food on the way out. I promise.
Despite those things, your work has been influential for decades, despite no vitamins. And, you're having this incredible career moment right now. I mean, did you expect to have another new book coming out, over 700 pages, around your 90th birthday, I believe, and
right.
be on John Oliver and, be being profiled anew at this point in your career? What's this been like?
All I can say is it's just been so much fun. I mean, RFK Jr. has been so much fun for me. I'm so grateful to him.
And I hope he gives
I
you
just
a
wish he
call.
were doing a better job for the country.
Do you have any advice for folks here who might hope to find themselves in the same position at your age and with having
work that
sustained a
you
career
love.
like this?
I mean, I've been lucky enough to have this fabulous, I worked at NYU for 35 years. I'm still attached to it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for me where I was lucky enough to feel like work is play. And if you're lucky enough to have a job like that, enjoy every minute of it. Oh, and eat your veggies.
What an incredible place for us to end. Marion, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
I love you.